For now, just a stroll without a care, 'cause I'm going down the road to a brand new place, and I'll get there with a smile on my face. Yeah, so lift me up, I'm moving on, singing and dancing while I play my song.
Welcome, your backup plan tribe, to this week's show. I'm so happy to have you here today with me, Tina. My name is Tina Ginn. I'm talking taboo with Tina on your backup plan podcast this week. Well, welcome to our show. I'm so very excited to bring you this wonderful guest from Chicago here this week. But son, I'm not done yet. What does that really mean? Well, Joe's going to tell us what that means. And I'm really quite excited to hear about his story and his journey through this path, because he's got some great tips and tricks for us. You are going to love it. If you found us for a reason. You please like, share, and subscribe to our channel down here below. Get my hand out. Oh, wrong way. Down here below is a subscribe button. Make sure you click on that subscribe button and make sure that you get notified of our upcoming videos. So if you are new here, welcome to our Talking Taboo with Tina. We focus on real, raw conversations with our listeners about their journey from a life-changing event in their life. What is your backup plan app anyways, Tina? That's what I get asked all the time. And your backup plan app puts your life all into one place in case of any unpredictable circumstance, while taking that painful aftermath out of the tragedy. Now, you might say, Tina, what does that mean? Because, back in the day, in the prairies, or a little house on the prairies, we would have our important documents and we would roll them up in paper bags, and we would, twist them tight and put them into the rafters in the basement or in the crawl space or in the roof and the rafters. And everybody in the family would know where the important documents are. But do we now? We don't even do that. We don't even know what important documents are, especially digitally, because we are all digital now. Everything, we don't get any bills to the door. We don't know anything. So that's what your backup plan app does. It helps you, guide you through the process of putting your stuff in one place so that it's there for you when you need it. It's there for your family when they need it. And I always say be prepared for the unexpected, because you don't know when it's going to happen to you. You don't know when it's going to happen to someone else that you are close to. That you get a knock on the door and say, I don't want to see you at the door, sir, but I know you have something bad to tell me. So please be better prepared for the unexpected. That's what I'm all about here, is teaching you how to be, teaching you what's important, what's needed, and not even just for death exactly, just for injury or sickness or being in a coma or the pandemic or the COVID scare, or you're stuck in ICU and you can't pay your bills, or somebody doesn't know how to pay your bills. It's for everything. It's for that wildfire that came streaming down your street in California. It's for the condo collapse in Florida that hundreds of people lost their homes. And lives. And it's for the hurricane, it's for the tornadoes, it's for the storms, it's for life. So we're getting ready to launch our Emerging Blueprint program very soon. I keep saying that. Tina, get your stuff together. It's just so, every time I start one of these projects, it becomes bigger and bigger as it evolves. And so it has a complete library of videos. It has worksheets and templates, and how to have that family conversation with your family about what do you want? What do you want it to look like? What do you want to have happen? Who do you want to do what? Who do you want to say what? All of that kind of stuff that we never, ever talk about. So Anyways, let's get this party going here. I am an emergency preparedness coach. Let me rephrase that a little bit. I'm a best-selling author of In the Blink of an Eye. Just like that quick. You can lose somebody. You can have something happen in the blink of in that blink. That's how quick it happens. I'm an app developer of Your Backup Plan app, and I'd like to welcome all of you to our channel, new and subscribed. Thank you for all of our repeat listeners. You don't know how much I truly cherish your faithfulness and loyalty to our show. And I hope that it's giving you some light into possibly some tips and tricks from our beautiful guests that we have come on our show. We'll be going into our 3rd season in a few months. I can't believe it. And I'd like to welcome our United States and our Canadian listeners as well, of course, as our German listeners who are top 3 right now. Italy is next, and Ireland, believe it or not, and then the UK and Australia. So far, that's how they rank, but it changes every month. Anyways, German listeners seem to be up there, so I always say hello to them. Meine deutsche Freunde sind unserem Podcast willkommen. Wenn Sie Kommentare haben, können Sie gern Fragen stellen. Also, danke für deine Freundschaft, meine deutsche Freunde. So thank you so very much for coming on our show and listening to it, whether it's on our YouTube channel or our podcast platform. So thank you. Our special guest today is brought to you from Chicago, beautiful cold Chicago. Don't you just love it? But son, I'm not done yet. My search for Christopher on the other side. We're going to bring on Joe McQuillen onto our show right now, and I will introduce him. There's Joe.
Hi, Tina.
Welcome aboard our show.
Thank you.
Now, Joe is an author of 2 books, and he'll tell us all about those, and they are in the description box below our channel here. He is currently working on a 3rd book. He's going to talk to us about his son who passed away in January 2016. And I don't even know how to explain it, but you are going to get so much information and in-depth research, I would say, that Joe has done over this time that's going to benefit you on how you can get through grief, how you can understand grief, how you can, sometimes when we're in the grief stage, we find it very difficult. At least I do. I feel, like there's this big block wall up in front of you and you just can't seem to get through this wall. Like, when is it ever going to just stop? And Joe's going to help us with that. So, and I think we have lost so many young teenagers and young 20-year-olds in our lives. I see it every day. Overdoses, addictions, mental illness, or just kids being kids. Car accidents as well. So thank you, Joe, for coming on our show. I really, really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And where did all of this start for you, Joe?
Well, it started in January 3rd, 2016. I was Christopher, and he was 21 years old, college student, home for Christmas break. And a dozen of his friends decided to spend the last Saturday night at a lake house an hour and a half north in Wisconsin that one of the boys owned. There was a dozen of them, and guys and gals. And, they decided to go up there on Saturday afternoon and kick up their heels and drink some beers and shoot some pool and crash at the buddy's house, get up in the morning and come home and get ready for college the next day. And I grew up in Buffalo, New York, so I'm a Buffalo Bills fan. I was waiting for Chris to come home so we could watch the game together, which, we're both avid fans, as is his little brother, Will. And I got a text from the the young man who owned the lake house, who was a high school friend of Chris. And he said, Mr. McHugh, Chris and 3 friends are missing. We got up this morning. It was about 11 o'clock, so they were kind of hiding what was going on for a few hours, and hope it was going to work out, and hope is not a strategy. So, I grabbed the dog and a hunting jacket and put on some boots and jumped in the Jeep and started heading up north. And I got a call from the uncle who lived down the street and said, Mr. McHugh, it's no longer a rescue, a recovery. It's no longer recovery, but a rescue. Or it's no longer a search, but a recovery. All four boys are drowned. And what happened was, kicking up their heels, drinking too much, and 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 of them walked outside, saw unlocked boathouse, opened it up, saw canoes, layered clothing, snoot full of cocktails, unlaced Timberland boots, partially frozen lake. It was a perfect storm. And they paddled out and none of them made it back. I was halfway up when I got that call, and you kind of go black, you go into shock a little bit, but it caused me to recall 16 years before, I'm kind of a whim. I went and saw a medium, right? And most of the reading was a little mundane. And I was like looking at my watch figuring, let's wrap this up. And right before she ended, her name is Nancy Meyer. She's out in Arizona now. And she said, your dad's here. And my dad had crossed over in 88. And this is about 2000. But this is still long before Google searches or Facebook or any of the other BS.
Yeah.
He said, your dad's here. And he's showing me a caboose. And he's telling you railroad. Now, you got to understand, if you look behind me, there's a railroad lantern on that bookcase. My dad spent 40 years on the railroad, raised 10 kids as a railroader. My uncle was a railroader. My grandfather was a railroader. We had 5 boys in our family. All of us worked on the railroad in school. I stayed on and worked on the railroad afterwards as a brakeman. We were a railroad family. That's, if anybody said, how do you describe the McQuillens? They're a railroad family. So when he said this, it made a ton of sense. Like, okay, good. The old man's there. Now, I didn't get any answers to the universe. I didn't get the lottery numbers. He just told me he was there. So what happened, what it caused, when I'm driving up to Wisconsin and I hear that Christopher had drowned in a canoe, my first thought was, well, wherever Christopher is, he's with my old man. We were a clan. We still are. That's how we roll. So if Christopher's somewhere, he's with my dad. All I got to do is find him, and look at me, I have a crew cut, I have a bent nose, hung up the hockey skates a couple years ago. I'm not a naive cat, right? And I don't look like a guy that would burn sage, candles,
No.
line my chakras. But guess what? I've got sage burning, candles. Before we started, I lined my chakras. I listen to guided meditations. I meditate all the time. That's who I am now, right? I guess that was me inside before too. They asked Michelangelo one time how he was able to carve David out of one single block. And he said, David was always in there. I just had to tip around. And that's kind of who I am now, Tina. I think God and Chris are chipping around to bring out who I'm becoming. What do you got?
Sage.
Oh, sage. All the time. I have sage burning here whenever I meditate. So now I figured, all right, I got a lot of stuff to do. I got to, I'm looking out my window of my office. It used to be Christopher's bedroom. And it's like I'm teleported right back to when I opened that door in that house in Wisconsin. I looked out over a picture window. There were rescue boats and lights and people, and it was horrible. I mean, I feel like crying right now listening to it. Right?
Yeah.
I had to identify Chris. I had to make the phone calls back home, which still breaks my heart, and tell his mom, that her baby was gone.
That's probably the hardest.
Yeah,
one.
That wasn't easy. Telling his godmother, telling his God's father, telling my family, having to tell the kids. And
what was identifying his body like for you, Jim?
Well, in Wisconsin, they won't let you identify the body. They identify a picture. And he was there with a minor league baseball coat that was mine. A Celtic cross. That jacket hangs. I tried to wear it one time. I put it back in the closet. You know, it was him. You know, it was him, but it wasn't him. You know, he had gone. Now, I didn't know much about it then. I mean, I'm kind of a boots on the ground guy, so I was not a metaphysical cat, right?
Yeah.
There's a poet, Haruki Murakami, and he said, and once the storm is over, you won't remember how you made it through, how you managed to survive. You won't even be sure whether the storm is really over. But one thing is certain. When you come out of the storm, you won't be the same person who walked in. That's what storms are all about. So that's what the storm was about. Now, I knew now from 16 years before that my dad was somewhere accessible because he came through. And so I knew Chris was with him. And I knew I just had to put in the footwork now and try to figure out what that means. Mm-hmm. You know, I had gotten in touch with that same medium who had relocated to Arizona. She told me things that I wouldn't know for certain until I got some reports later on about how they drowned, what was it like, what was going on. I had talked to other mediums. I became, you know, I would listen to some, you know, speakers and spirit circles and do all the things that a guy that looked like me. And part of it was, you know, I get what some people in the audience are thinking, like I'm putting a salve on this open wound to try to heal it, but that wasn't it. You know, if this was hokey BS, I wanted to check it off the box and figure something else out. 6 months into Christopher's transition, this crossing over, I don't say die because energy doesn't die, spirit doesn't die. I'm a Catholic kid, you know, kind of C&E Catholic occasionally, you know. I believed in heaven, I guess. I just never really gave any thought to it. So what that meant, communion of saints, you know, and so I wasn't sure. So 6 months into it, something happened that changed the whole dynamic for me. I've been doing a lot of reading. Bob Olson wrote a book about the afterlife. You know, he was a private investigator from LA, loved it, you know, read a lot of books and listened to a lot of people and saw some mediums. I went and saw a guy named Andrew Anderson. I looked him up and it turned out to be Bob Olson's webpage. And I didn't know that when I saw it. I love Bob's book. And I looked up a guy who was rated high, lived in the area. His name's Andrew Anderson. So I booked it. All he had was my first name. And he said, bring a picture of whoever you want to connect with. So the night before I was going to leave, I had received some shamrocks. Now, here's kind of funny story.
Yeah.
Is that Christopher was buried in January 8th, 2016. Cold winter, right? Frozen ground. They don't put the headstone until the ground softens. When the snow melted, even though we bought a number of plots that day, when the storm melted, he was next to another family, another couple, and I was livid. I was burned up, right?
Yeah.
So I, held my breath, stomped my feet, said some names, and wrote a check and moved him over one plot. Now I'll occupy his plot, but there was no way that I was going to go there and
with him, like with
somebody else's family. He's a McQuillen, for all time. So here it is in it's actually June 30th, 2016. So I go out to see Andrew. Before I go there, I do two things. I stop and I get this bracelet I wear it all the time now. It's a leather bracelet from Disney World. Chris gave me when he was about 5. It says Dad on it. And it was in my drawer. It was in my dresser. I never even looked at it. I pulled it out, put it on that morning. I stopped at the grave and planted shamrock seeds, which come through to this day, 6 years later. And then I went out and saw Andrew. Showed him the picture, and he said, I see the kid, Tommy Bahama shirt, having fun, but there was a dark side. There was some depression there, and it was, And we were always worried about him. He was a party boy, a lot of fun, great friend. 2,000 people showed up at his wake. 2,000. Wow. They left the funeral. Grace Martinson was the funeral director. She left it open 2 extra hours so everybody could make it through in a snowstorm. It's just amazing. And 2,000 kids and friends, not kids, people. So this day now, I go to the grave. I plant the shamrock seeds. I show up at Andrew's, show him a picture. He tells me, and he said, Christopher acknowledges you're wearing a bracelet he gave you. Now, this bracelet was under a cuff. It was like this. This is
Right under your shirt.
I didn't have it on display. It said, Joe's bracelet. He also said, Christopher said you were at his grave planting something recently, like today.
Wow.
That's the moment, Tina. I went from believing to knowing. And he said, your family was together on the other side celebrating some sort of event yesterday for you. What was it? And it was my wedding anniversary. Sally and I are married 30 years now.
Oh,
It was
wow.
our 24-year anniversary. And that he said your family on the side was celebrating. Now, we came through with a bunch of other amazing things, but that was the first time that I knew, Tina, that this was real. There was a movie called What Dreams May Come with Cuba Gooding Jr. and Robin Williams. And Robin Williams was a doctor who got killed in a car accident. Cuba Gooding was his spirit guide. And we were talking about spirit guides before. And Robin Williams couldn't figure out what the hell happened, why, what's going on. And Cuba said, the origin of the word body is the Anglo-Saxon bodig, meaning abode, which is what the physical body is, a transient dwelling for the real self. He said, like you're in your house now. You're in your house. That doesn't mean you are your house. Your house falls down, you get up and walk away. And that's what happened. His body didn't work for him anymore here. And his spirit moved somewhere else. And his spirit's energy, and ask any scientist, energy doesn't go away, doesn't die. So this started my journey, and it continued. On the anniversary of his crossing, and this is how we get to a book. So on the anniversary of his crossing, it was June 3rd, 2017.
Yeah.
Now, I had started getting up in the middle of the night about 3 o'clock in the morning. Now, it's not all that unusual for a guy my age, but it was different. I was like waking up. So I'd go in the office and I'd meditate and I'd light sage and I would just feel close to him. But this day was different, right, on his anniversary. So I get up and come in, light guided meditation, do everything. Go into a bit of a meditative trance, which is easy to do if you follow the steps, right? And I started getting downloads from him. And I was like, what the heck is this, And I grabbed a pen and I had a legal pad on my desk. And I just started, this very room I'm sitting in. And I started writing everything he told me. He told me about, he said, Dad, you're not going to believe this place. It's friggin' amazing. He said, the colors, the greens, the blues. Greens are vibrant. He said, the air is always warm, but it's a combination of air and love air. He said, it's a little over your head now, but that's what our place is like. And then he said to me, and this is how I knew this wasn't me trying to make myself feel better. He said, Dad, you got to let go of the resentment. I love Scotty. He loved me. We were pals. He was just being him. It wasn't his fault. You got to let that go. Now, Scotty was the kid whose parents owned the lake house. I don't know. I was mad that they were permissive. He was wealthy enough to have this big house. I don't know. I was mad,
Yeah.
And
well, you don't
Irish,
really know why, I guess, huh?
Yeah, well, being
really.
Irish, we like to hold grudges, right? Right? You know that, Tina. You know what they say, the Irish Alzheimer's, where you forget everything but the grudges, So
Not the truth.
I was livid. And Chris said, you got to let it go. So I said, okay, buddy. And it went on for 3 pages of different things that he was telling me. And I said, okay, buddy, I promise I'll let this go. And I figured, this is easy. When am I going to see this kid again? Flash forward 12 hours. Sally and I were going to go to the grave at sundown, light a Chinese lantern, send it up, and tell our baby we loved him. And that was the plan. And like the Greeks used to say, man plans and God's laugh, Yeah. And I got a text from a couple of his fraternity buddies who are like family to us now. I mean, there's, they get together every year. And they said, Mr. McHugh, they get together a bunch of times a year in Chris's honor. They said, Mr. Q, a few of us getting together at the grave at 3:30. You want to join us? And I said, sure. So I grabbed the hockey cooler, throw some beer in for the kids and a handful of cigars and drove up. The parking lot was full. I get out. There's 40 kids at his grave, from grammar school to college to grade school. And the first kid I saw was Scotty. And I was able to embrace him and say, buddy, it wasn't your fault. I love you. Chris loved you, But if he hadn't prepared me for that, I would have been awkward or mean or hostile or heartbreaking. Who knows? But Chris prepped me for that, and I wasn't ready to let resentment go. So ever since then, Tina, a couple times a month, I get that wake-up call. I come in, I go through my routine. I'm an old ball player, right? You don't break a routine if you're on the street. And, when I did it, a few days ago, and he comes through and he tells me things, gives me lessons, talks to me about his place versus mine. He said, Dad, your place, your side is great. He said, it's kind of like a football camp, right? He said, it's a lot of work, man, and some pain and disappointment, but you're with your friends and you're competing and it's good and you're happy there. He said, that's what your side is. My side's a beach bungalow in Maui. Mine's better, That's what you have to look forward to. That's where you're going, and he pressed me to write a book. So, I started taking notes down that I assumed I'd be sitting on a rocking chair when I'm older with a cigar, reading these notes, right? Keeping notes from copious notes, good word from a blue collar kid from Buffalo, New York, right? So I started taking notes about every medium setting, started taping them. I transcribe them, put them in order according to the date, put them in a file. And that's what I thought I was going to do. And then in the following, that year.
The same year of 2018?
Yeah, this was in 17 now.
Okay.
So I've been keeping notes since 17. Or I've been keeping the medium notes since before, and his downloads since 17. And I sat on the top of the stairs. Sally's brother, my wife Sally, 30 years, Christopher's ma, 30 years married, and they were talking about how Chris was tenacious when he was a little kid. He was 2-3 years old, playing hide and seek, and he'd yell, hide again, and he'd go hide under a basket, and hide again, and he'd hide in the closet. And this could go on for days. And I thought, wait a minute. He's there. I just got to find him, right? And I went upstairs and started writing the first book. And the first book was my search for Christopher on the other side, because that's what it was. The first book was my actual search to find how to make those connections. And through dozens of amazing medium connections. A week and a half ago, we saw John Edward for the first time. I hadn't heard of him since the old days, right? When he had his radio TV show.
Yeah.
300 people. The last 15 minutes, he walked up and identified Chris. And he said, Christopher Joseph. And he explained that he was responsible for his own death. Even though it wasn't a suicide, he was responsible for his own death, and he owns it. Told us about a number on a jersey.
What do you think happened?
They were loaded. They were doing what boys do. They were frolicking, hanging around, wrestling, rocking. What do I believe? Because I've been told somebody's untied laces got caught. One of the ribs of the canoe had flipped over. Chris could have saved himself, but he wouldn't have been able to live with himself if he didn't. So he was trying to save a friend. The water was in the 30s. So hyperthermia hit.
Yeah.
Now, two things I'm real grateful for, Tina. One is, I've asked mediums, Thomas John is a fabulous medium. And I asked him a one-on-one reading. And he said, look, he never felt anything. It's like passing out, right? It was a little unnerving. Yeah. And then the hypothermia, thank God they had the alcohol, although it was a cause of his this accident. It also prevented them from feeling any pain. Mary C. Neal, who's a surgeon, wrote this amazing book. And Heaven and Back, I think is the name of it. But she died drowning and went to heaven. And I listened to books on Audible. Both my books are on Audible. I listened to books on Audible. And her book was amazing. When she talked about how she felt when she drowned, how peaceful it was and soothing, and that there was no pain. And the colors were vibrant, and then waking up on the other side. So I heard that coming back from Wisconsin. I just started bawling, knowing my son didn't suffer, didn't feel pain, isn't tormented by it, which once you cross over and you do a life review, he said to me one time, Dad, knock it off. He said, knock off worrying about how I felt. He said, remember when you were in your 20s, you blew your knee out? Probably hurt, right? He said, but you don't remember the pain now. don't recall what that felt like. He said, that's the same thing. I said, that's why I know it's not me. I'm not that smart, you know. He said to me one time, this was amazing. My sister Marcia was his godmother, and this fabulous woman, a real source of love for me. She was 15 when I was born, big Irish family. So she was very maternal to me all my life. You know, sometimes she'd move to Florida, her husband, and sometimes I'd drive 1,100 miles just to hear her tell me it was okay, you know. And she'd say, I know, honey. You know, I'd be with her after Chris drowned, and she'd go, I know, honey. You know, and she died of cancer, and she died the way she lived, her way. You know, she tried everything, and it wasn't getting better, and she said, I'm done. You know, and so I was grateful to be able to be with her before more often than not, before she died a couple of days. And she said to me, and this was such a gift, she said to me, Tina, she called me Joey. She goes, Joey, honey. She said, I read your book, I'm Not Afraid to Die. You gave me the greatest gift. A year later, I went and saw a medium out in the western suburbs. And she said, Chris was there. And she said, it was on my birthday. So 11 months after Marcia crossed over. And she said, but your sister's here. And she has the title of sister, mother, aunt. I said, she was all of that
Friend,
to Chris.
Everything.
All of it. She said to tell you thanks for the greatest gift. And she's calling you Joey. You know, now, I mean, you just can't make that stuff up. That wasn't anywhere. That's going in book 3, right? Because this happened in 19. It wasn't anywhere published. So when she was crossing over, Christopher said to me, in one of our downloads, he said, look, Pop. And he would call me Dad when it's serious and Pop when it's, you know, cool. Yeah. And he did that on this side, of course. He said, look, Pop, the minute Marcia crosses over, I promise I'll be there. I will. You'll know that. And so when she crossed over in February 6, 2019, she said, the next day he said, you know, or a couple of days later, I had a session with him. And he said, look, you know, Dad, we were all here. I promised I'd be there. And he said, Jerry, Pat, Billy, Bobby, Carrie, we were all here to greet her. He said, but then she had to go somewhere, like a spa. And when she came back, she looked even younger than when I was a kid. So this took me a while to figure out, Tina. And what happened was she had cancer. When she died, the cancer stayed with her body, but the trauma crossed with her. So she had to go somewhere. And what a loving way to put it, like a spa.
Mm-hmm.
The cancer was purged. The cancer was able to be released, and her spirit came back free of it and light and airy and joined the family. And he said, the circle will be completed when you cross. But he said, it's not your time now. Your time now is to write books and talk to people. So that was the first book, My Search for Christopher on the Other Side. And as I was finishing the first book, I started feeling a little melancholy because Chris and I have this amazing connection where I download and I get all these messages. And
amazing.
He's
there.
He is there. You know, he's there. He's just not, I can smell him. I can feel him. I certainly hear him. Twice I've been able to see him, you know, both times at deep meditation. I want more, but I'm greedy. So you know, I know that he's here, you know, and so when I feel that, I know that, you know, I got to, and he says to me, you know, Dad, you got to get this going. Thomas Sean said to me, you writing a book? I go, yeah. He goes, Chris said, let's get going. Let's get going. I mean, he said, you got to help people. And what he said is, people will believe it because of who you are, because of how you look, because of what you say. He said, they're going to believe it where they might not believe it from somebody else. So you need to get it out there.
Right.
So I was feeling a little melancholy about the first book coming to an end, right? I didn't know what I was going to do with it. Didn't know how to get it published. I'm not an author, right?
Right.
And
it's not like you planned for it. So
that was not a plan. So I started feeling a little sad that maybe this connection was going to diminish. And he said, hey, Pop, you know, we're not done yet. We're going to be writing books until you cross. And that's the name of the second book. We're not done yet. My lessons from the other side. And the second book picks up after the first one.
The first one.
You know, and what I've learned.
It's like a Harry Potter series.
Yeah. What he wants me to communicate. What do you want? You know, and I got to tell you, you know, it gives me air to breathe. You know, to be connected with him, and he loves it when I get up in the middle of the night. You know, I remember one time I was in, so Marcia was still there and she was getting ready to transition. And I was in Naples, and for some reason the beaches in the Gulf Coast of Florida are amazing, right? They're just a real connection. I mean, one of the reasons is Siesta Key is quartz crystal, you know, flown down from, look it up. It's science. You know, it's not sand. It's quartz crystal in Siesta Key. So it's like a transmitter, right? So I went down, grabbed a cigar, said, oh, there you go. All right. Sat on the beach, crystals, lit a cigar, started meditating. And I get a download that says, go to Siesta Key, Pop. And I was like, son of a gun. I got a 9 o'clock flight in the morning. It's 11 o'clock at night. It's a couple hours each way. So I said, I'll make you a deal, kid. I'm going to look on my phone. And if it's open, I'm going. But I'm not going to get there and be closed out, right?
And where do you have to go?
2 hours north. I was in Naples visiting Marcia in Naples, Florida, and I have 2 hours to Sarasota. Hour 40 minutes.
Oh, okay. Sarasota, which is, right above Fort Lauderdale.
No, the other side.
Or the other side. Okay.
Yeah, it's halfway between Naples and Tampa. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's right in the middle there.
Okay.
So, you know, grabbed a couple Red Bulls, grabbed a couple cigars, you know, sorry about the rental car, and drove up and got there, and I just felt them all around. And I just laughed. You know, I laid on the sand. I got a text from a medium that said, look at the stars. Your son's with you. You know, it's like Sherry Jewell, who's a dear friend. And so, I mean, I know that he was on the other side with buddies going, see, I told you the old man would show up. You know, when you get that instinct, I'm telling families and parents, and when you get that instinct, go with it, right? Like what I did with the grave wasn't silly.
Don't question yourself.
Yeah, I go to the grave all the time. I mean, all the time. And it's not like I'm some sad guy feeding pigeons, right? I have a wonderful life. I just happen to have a piece of my heart's broken, and it won't heal until I see Chris again on the other side, you know, when I cross. So I go to the grave all the time, and it's perfect. It's open 24 hours. They don't lock it. I go there at night, sometimes in the sun, and day up, golf, and stop over. And I have a, folding Buffalo Bills folding chair, and I usually have my Labrador with me, and I light a cigar and we talk. And it's a phenomenal setting. It's a thin place for me, where the veil is thinnest between both worlds. And I just
do you find that?
Everybody has thin places. They just need to find them.
Need to find them. Yeah.
This room's a thin place. The grave's a thin place. The beaches and the Gulf Coast are thin places. That's where you could.
What do you think for listeners? How they understand that? Okay. I understand it, and I'll tell you after.
So think about it. You ever go to a Japanese restaurant and you have those rice paper walls, right, that slide open, like Benihana's, right?
Yeah.
It's the walls between both worlds. They're that thin. So here's the deal, and it's on my website. There's steps to connect, and it's doing all the things I'm talking about. We have to raise our level of consciousness, right, through meditation, letting go of resentments, kindness, thoughts of, doing the right thing, thinking about. I breathe in on every level of a chakra chart, right, and each one, I breathe in. I hold my breath for 7 seconds, exhale, say Chris's name, because I want to connect with him, right? So whoever you're doing, there's rules for this stuff, right? You got to figure them out.
Yeah.
And somebody once told me, I was in a group, and she said, my sister's been gone 3 years, and I've never connected with her. And I said, what have you done to do your share? I bet your sister wants to connect with you, but you haven't gotten off the couch with a remote because you feel bad. Learn to do your part. If you want to connect. I
find you can't have that paper wall, that thin layer, if you live in fear and regret and sadness.
And it's hard. Every parent specifically is going to have regrets. I've written them down and burned them and done all the things. Mm-hmm. They creep in. We're human.
Yeah.
Right? Now, there's times Christopher sometimes have said to me that I need to let go of any of that. And he said, you're a great dad. And he said, you got to let that go. I remember asking medium one time, ask Chris if I ever came up short. And the response was, God, no, you've never came up short, Pop. You are short, but you never came up. Now, that was my kid. He was kind of a, crack up. He was blowing me
Smart
smoke
ass.
on the other side. That's exactly who he was. And the kids' personalities don't change. They go to different levels. And I was worried about that because he told me, Pop, I'm moving to a different level. And I thought, they're still going to let you talk to your old man, And he said, look, Dad, it's like me calling you from Tucson or L.A., long distance. Either way, I get through. Don't worry about that. He said, we're going to be together until you cross over. Then we'll be together again, So, I got to tell you, I'm in no hurry. I have a wonderful life. I enjoy every day. I really do. Sometimes it's difficult, Easter, thinking of Easter bunnies and little kids and egg hunts.
Yeah.
But that's the way it goes,
Yeah.
That's part of the deal.
Make new memories, I guess.
Yeah. And my life is very full, right? But I do know, like my sister said, I'm not afraid to die. If God tapped me on the shoulder and said, pal, you're pitching relief tomorrow on the other side. I've lived a life beyond my wildest dreams here. Touched some people with some books that I've written with my son, who's on the other side, and get to spend that next round with him on the other side. What am I afraid of?
Right. I'll tell you just quickly, because I know listeners may find it hard to understand. Well, because there is a big wall up and you have to find that entryway into that, like you and Christopher have, like a tunnel. Like I want to picture it as like, it's like knock, 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 Christopher, are you there?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Okay, you're not. Okay, I'll try again later kind of thing. But, and I only say that because I went to Alcatraz, for anybody in San Francisco.
I've been there, yeah.
Well, not with Tina, because I got lost and they locked it up because they were waiting for 7:00 to do the next night tour. And we were the last bunch going to this last tour at 4:30, 5:00. So they had everybody go out and they didn't know I was still inside by myself. And at first I saw they have the escape route in a plexiglass in the wall, but I'll back up a little second. They had said over the loudspeaker, I was with a group of people, but everybody just kind of left and went on their own. And I had gone upstairs to the hospital, which they just opened up. And when I came back down, by the time I came back down, everybody was gone, including all the workers. So I saw this man standing at this plexiglass. If you remember, that's how they escaped. That's how they kind of visualized it. Yeah. But he didn't look real. And I just got so scared because I'm in here. I don't know how to get out. I just don't know. And I thought, okay, I'll look for light. I'll go towards the light, as they say. And I ran to the library area because I felt, and it's funny because you learn how to feel this level of curtain. Why do I feel safe there, but I don't feel safe in the prison area of the cells? And then I started hearing them all laughing at me. It was like you walked into a pub and you heard all these men's voices and they're laughing. Oh, look at her, huh? Like they were almost like clanging their beer glasses together. And it made me even more scared because I'm trying to find my way out. Right. But there's this veil. There is this veil between them and us. Yeah. And I felt like I went into a pub. So that's how thin that veil was. Right. So that was just my little input of my veil story, because I think some people don't quite understand what that feeling's like to be able to access that other level. And it really is. They're just in another room. We just, we don't have the same kind of access we would have if they were on this side, but they do. Remember, they got to lower their level of energy because theirs is much higher, and we got to raise ours. We meet in the middle.
Let me tell you a crazy, wonderful story.
Yeah.
A year ago, I was in Florida at my sister Marcia's house, and she'd been gone 2 years at that point. And so I was there, and I called my friend Sherry Jewell, who's a medium. And I just, we talk occasionally, we're pals. And it was actually her, my wife, and I went to see John, crossing over John on the my mind just went south. But we once saw John at the medium reading at the other day, and so she's a good gal, and just kind of came into my life. So I was on the deck having a cigar at my sister's house, and she said, hey, she's a medium, and we're on the phone, like headsets on the phone. This isn't Zoom, and she's John Edward. Sorry about that, my mind lost her.
Yeah.
But she said, Christopher, where are you? She goes, I don't feel Chris coming through. That's unusual. She said, but somebody else is here. Are you in Marcia's house? I said, yeah, I'm in Marcia's house. She goes, well, she's so happy you're using it. She has a real maternal feeling for you. I said, she was very motherly for me. We went through a couple of funny family stories, a piano bar story that was funny, and a couple of other, things that were just evidentiary meetings. But here's one that'll just kick your butt. She said, Marcia wants to know where her keys are. So Sally and I had gone up to Siesta Key for a week. And then she went back home, and I went back down to Marcia's house. And I left the keys under the mat for the guy who keeps an eye on the house. And I went and looked, and they weren't there. And so Marcia said to Sherry, Marcia's afraid you're going to get locked out of her house. I said, all right. So I went over on a hook by the light switch was the master set of keys. So I took them off and put them in my pocket. Started walking back out on the deck. And Sherry said, Marcia said, put the keys back on the hook. It's like, this wasn't Zoom, kids, and we weren't talking about this. I picked them up, put them in my pocket, and continued to walk. I turned around, put the keys back on the hook. You can't connect those dots unless with a little bit of willingness, right? That's undeniable what happened, and that happens, by the way, because I'm open to it all the time,
right?
All the time, and if you're not getting that, work harder. There's a book, Connecting with Spirit for Dummies. My book is outstanding. Both of them. You read the first one first. Easy reads. It's really easy reads. You can set 2 settings, and most people say they can't put it down. Especially if they've had some significant loss. Right. There's a lot of good stories about. Second book, I have a chapter called Good Eggs. Just talk about the great, wonderful people in your life who are supportive and caring and loving. And here's a guy that's writing books about son that died 6 years ago, and everybody just, that's the way it is. They buy it, they believe it. They're on the journey with me. So if you're out there and you lost somebody and you think it's over, there's a wonderful, she's a medium, she's an author. Her name's Suzanne Giesman. She was the assistant to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. She was a Navy commander. Talk about straight up and down like 6 o'clock.
Wow.
And we've become pals, her and I. Great author, wrote a couple of good, and one of her books is called Still Right Here.
Yeah.
That's the name of the book. And that's the message, that the people you love are still right here. Now you got to understand, the deal sucks. I would much rather be preparing to play 9 holes of golf with my kid and getting a burger tomorrow.
Yeah.
Than to be delving into the metaphysical with you. I gotta be honest. I'd much rather. Yeah. But you don't get to unring that bell. You can't change the events. So the bottom line is, what are you going to do about it? Right? And Chris wants me to help parents who've lost kids. He wants me to help people who've lost people they love. It doesn't have to be, in my arrogance, I think nobody feels the pain that I do. So it's parents who've lost kids. But somebody lost a spouse. My best friend lost a spouse, a dozen years ago. And, and we walked ourselves through it, him and I, and that's what this whole thing is. It's connecting, it's sharing, it's helping others. So I said to you before, and I mean this, I live my life 2 ways. now. And it wasn't like this. I wasn't this
Before.
guy
Yeah.
before. I lived my life to please my God. And I lived my life to make my son proud. And as long as I follow those two tenets, I can't go wrong. Every decision is based on those two things.
Yeah.
And I know if I do that, he's going to greet me with unbelievably open arms when I take that step across the stream sometime in the future,
Right. Do you think, they always say we've already lived our life. It's already done when we're living here. Have you heard
Well,
that?
I have not heard that, but I will tell you, time means nothing. Time's us. Like we
Yeah.
understand time.
Days
time-
and time.
Means nothing to them, right? Time's linear to us, right? Time means zero to them. So, and I know that we've been through this 40 to 80 times. We've gone through these lives, right? Now, the people now, I don't believe in soulmates. I think that's a hallmark term, right? But I
Right.
believe in soul family. And there's people in our lives that the only way you can connect with how familiar they are with you is that you've been through this together before. My best friend's 14. We met when we were 14 years old. We've been best friends ever since, right? There's no way that comfort came from a spontaneous meeting at Bishop Timon High School. We played ball together, transferred schools, chased girls, drank beer. He was better at all of it than I was, by the way. And there's no doubt in my mind now that I know that we've been through lives together. Christopher and I could just be. We were very comfortable with each other. Our souls were comfortable. I believe in something, I believe in twin flames, which means bodies sharing one soul, beings sharing one soul. So I believe that. I think we went through a number of lifetimes together. One of the reasons, and I've been told that, and one of the reasons that we were so comfortable is that we were siblings in another lifetime, So, there's no doubt that now I also know, and this isn't guessing or speculation, that if you're done, you don't have to come back. It's your call, right? My dad crossed, and from the time he crossed, medium said, he's not coming back. He's tired. He's content. He's staying there, right? Chris, I believe at some point will come back. Now, here's the cool thing. This is what worried me.
Yeah.
These are thoughts that keep me up, is that what if I'm crossing and he's coming here, right? Cross on the metaphysical highway. It would just be
And
like
then you
my
miss
luck.
each other.
Right. And the answer that I found out after some serious research is that the souls have a bunch of spirit, right? Think about a lake, and this is Bob Olson explains this. A lake has waves. Each one of the lake is the body of water, and each one of those waves is a spirit. The soul is the body of water, and each wave is a spirit. So Chris McQuillen, son of Joe McQuillen, will always be on the other side when I cross over. Yet another part of his soul will come back in another spirit and do it again, and probably be a father. He's told me, he doesn't have a lot of regrets. He lived life the way he wanted to, but he would like to have been a dad. He was wonderful with kids. He'd have liked to have been a dad, So, I believe in a very benevolent, loving God. Let me tell you a story about God. Let's go back to God.
Yeah.
And so
From the beginning.
Yeah. So when Christopher John, there was a whole bunch of details, from churches to plots to getting my son's suits to readings to receptions to all of it, grave plots. I mean, you wouldn't imagine. So I'd come home and I'd start handling the details, kind of in shock, really. Just left foot, right foot.
I tell people that your brain disappears.
But you have to, what? Here's the thing. I couldn't roll up in a little ball. I have a family that counts on me. I had a son that crossed over that was counting on me. I had to do my job,
Well, you had a son here too.
I had a son and a daughter here.
And a
needed
wife.
me. And a wife and a dog. And so, so during that week, when I finish the day, I'm exhausted, right? After running these errands and doing all these details and meeting with people. And I would do what I've been sober 36 years. I know where my son got the wild side. And it wasn't from my wife. He got it from me. And I'd get on my knees and I would thank God for my sobriety and my family. But I said, but we're not good, God, you and me. We're not good. You took my kid, right? Did this 3 nights in a row. The third night I got in bed and I got a message that said, I didn't take your son. His recklessness and free will caused him to come home early, and I welcomed him. And remember, I lost a son too. So it's at that point that I stopped thinking of God as somebody who took my kid,
Right.
or maybe even worse, caused my son to leave to make me pay for past sins, right? All this Catholic guilt stuff.
Right.
That left that moment, and I knew God was the benevolent source that was holding me up during this time when I shouldn't have been able to do what I was doing. And I knew that God and I were good, that more importantly, I was okay with him. You know, that he's not a chess master moving us around, right, for his amusement. He's a loving father. I had one. I had a loving father. So it's easy for me to acknowledge and feel like what a loving father's like. You know?
Absolutely.
So, you know, God, you know, I'm just grateful as heck that my son's in a place where he's in a place of love and benevolence. Like that's his home now.
Well, don't they say God works in magical ways?
You know, here's a great quote from the movie and the book, The Shack. Remember The Shack? Did you ever see it?
Yeah. Was it that 80s? Was it the
No,
80s?
came out about 10 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Fabulous book. And it was about a dad lost a daughter in a horrible way and then went into a coma and met God. And it was in the second book, I talk a lot about the shack, and I talk about, other thin type places. You know, the Razor's Edge by Somerset Maugham refers to thin places. You know, he's in the Himalayas. Anyhow, so he meets with God, and God said, just because I work incredible good out of unspeakable tragedies doesn't mean I orchestrate the tragedies. Don't ever assume that my using something means I caused it or that I needed to accomplish my purpose. That will only lead you to false notions about me. And so that's what it is. You know, God's through me and Chris, mostly Chris, God's doing incredible
Work.
good out of this horrible tragedy. You know, if I could turn back the clock and undo it, I would.
Yeah.
But there's no one ringing the bell, kiddo. That's the way it is.
No, there sure isn't. What final message would you like to give everyone, Joe? That you've
Still
talked
right
too
here.
much?
They're still right here. Your kids, your loved one, your spouse, your dad, your mom. You know, you don't take them. You're not taking them away from anything when you connect with them. They can do their job and still connect with you. We'll figure that out when we cross. I'm not exactly sure how it works. Doesn't matter to me.
No.
But I do know if you do your part and follow some simple steps and then accumulate your own, you'll be able to connect. You know, so try. Just try. If it doesn't work, I'll refund your misery. You know what I mean? The bottom line is, you know, we're all energy and they're waiting to connect with you. You know, don't waste another minute.
Wow. Look at you.
Look at me.
That's like, it should be a quote on a picture or something.
Maybe a statue, you know.
Well, that was so beautiful. My goodness. That was awesome, Joe. And now I'm really anxious to read your books.
Good. I'm anxious for you to read my book too. Both of them.
Yeah. No, awesome. And I'm looking forward to the third one. It sounds like a continuation of
It is, but I'm in no hurry. You know, what's great is the first one I had a deadline. He wanted me to finish by Father's Day of 2018, and I did. And the second one, he wanted me to do it by Easter, and I did. You know, and this one, there's not. You know, it's kind of like him and I. Now we're just stretching our legs, and I'm learning more things, and he's proud of the fact that I'm not only telling people about it, but I'm stretching my consciousness and raising my level of energy to learn more, and which I'm going to continue to do until I cross.
It sounds like, I mean, you're not happy, but you are happy. You know what I mean? Because you're able to talk to him.
See, I still, you know, I got this amazing,
that don't.
It's not a void, right?
Yeah.
It's not one or the other. It's not, I got to tell you, when I golf, I feel him around me all the time. There's certain times I feel him around. There's certain times I just feel him around me, and other times when he comes through to me, I feel him around me. So
Right.
I'm as happy as a brokenhearted guy can be, right?
Yeah. No, but you're
And
comforted,
I'm
right? I think
I'm
is the word.
comforted and I'm comfortable in the position that I'm in,
Right.
and I know what's next, right? That's the deal, Tina. I know what happens next. He's described to me what it's going to be like when I cross over. I know. I'm afraid of nothing. I'm in
Yeah.
no hurry to go, but I'm
Yeah.
certainly not afraid of it, and I don't want to hold on too tight.
No.
Right? This is just one shot. Once around the track here.
Yeah.
They say heaven's a place where your dog talks and your dad's always young. And it's where my Christopher is. So I'm comfortable going.
Yeah. No, it sounds absolutely wonderful,
Yeah.
actually.
I think it is.
And I think it is too. So thank you, Joe. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Much appreciated, that's for sure. So take a moment and subscribe to our channel and click on that bell down here at the bottom. Oh, I always get this the wrong way around. Down here, you'll see a little bell. Click on that bell so you get notified. And everybody, when you are thinking about that someone special watching the show right this minute, and I know you are, please reach out to them, tell them, call them, go to their door, visit, Zoom, whatever it takes, FaceTime. We have so many different ways, and make sure you tell them how much you love and care about them, because you don't know what tomorrow will bring. Stay tuned for our podcast and our live streams. I have great conversations with some of the most interesting and accomplished people in the world today, like our wonderful Joe here today. I think you'll be entertained, informed, and hope that we've inspired you and motivated you to start thinking about what Joe has kind of brought to our attention, that, you can do it too. You can be closer to those that have passed away by just working a little bit harder at it. So thank you again to all our listeners. We are on all our podcast platforms. We're on YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and TikTok and Facebook groups. I'd like to thank you for sharing our show with everybody that you feel that you could pass this to and that will mean something. And I always end with Carol Burnett. And I know, Joe, you know who Carol Burnett is. I'm so glad we had this time together just to have a laugh or sing a song. Seems we just get started, and before you know it, comes the time we have to say so long. So long, everybody. Stay safe and be kind. Till next time. Thanks, Joe, for coming.